Okay, so without further ado, I would like to greet everybody a pleasant afternoon, and I would like to offer a warm welcome to our first GIS Conversations webinar for the year. I'm quite happy to see that we have a great turnout for our first webinar, not just coming from different sectors, but also from local and overseas. So we have opened our GIS Conversations webinar to 4 countries this year, to Singapore, to Indonesia, Malaysia, and Australia. So we are looking forward to interacting with all of you as we progress through our webinar and even at the end. So before we start, let me just go through some quick housekeeping rules. First, this webinar is being recorded as we speak, and it will be available by the end of this week at the Esri Singapore website. Second, for those who have registered and for those who are currently inside our webinar attendees, you will be receiving an email that includes the link to this recording. It will also be published on the landing page of the GIS Conversations program at the Esri Singapore website. So please feel free to visit those pages and give us your feedback or concerns regarding what we have presented or what we will be presenting this afternoon. So while the webinar is happening, please feel free to send us your questions through the Q&A panel. So you can click on Q&A or through the chat. So we will be monitoring our chat box as we progress through the webinar, and we'll be taking note of the questions. So our speaker for this afternoon's GIS Conversations webinar is Ms. Elaine Pama. So Elaine is an Esri certified ArcGIS desktop professional who has been working with GIS spatial technology for 6 years. As a solution specialist under the professional services team here in Esri Singapore, she has worked on multiple projects for different agencies, utilizing the ArcGIS platform and solutioning best practices to geo-enable our clients' systems. Prior to joining Esri Singapore, Elaine was a GIS analyst within the Esri Inc. support team and handled GIS technical support for a web map system in Singapore. She was also involved in a government project in the Philippines which focused on 3D GIS and LiDAR mapping. So your host for today is myself, Sarah Villavicencio, and if you have any questions or you're quite shy on asking those questions regarding the topic for this afternoon, you can go ahead and send us an email found on our contact details on the screen. So without further ado, let me now hand over the floor to Elaine.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all excited about the topic that we'll be having today, which is focusing on GIS and BIM. For today's webinar, we will first introduce BIM and GIS as concepts and an overview of their integration. We'll focus on BIM as a process and essentially what drove the GIS BIM integration and why is this integration important. We'll proceed with BIM in our GIS environment. So we will cover the topics on what are the supported BIM format in our GIS environment, as well as its data structure and organization. Then we will cover the common workflows when working with BIM data in ArcGIS. So we'll focus on geo-referencing and positioning data, converting ArcGIS data, converting the Revit data to ArcGIS data format, as well as sharing it as a scene layer package so we can extend the functionality to our ArcGIS Online or Enterprise accounts. So let's start off with introducing you with the concept of BIM. What is BIM? BIM stands for Building Information Model, and it is actually the process for collaboratively creating and using detailed information about built assets throughout their life cycle. Though many people think of BIM as for buildings, as the structure, the term has grown to cover the process for creating, renovating, and replacing both vertical and horizontal assets. So when we speak of vertical asset, we pertain to architecture, and when we say horizontal asset, we mean transportation and utilities. So it is not just it is just not necessarily a data format or a software product, but it's more about the process of creating those. Okay, so BIM connects the AEC professionals so they can more efficiently design, build, and operate buildings and infrastructures. So it is driven by the global trends that these AEC industries is in time of transformation, whereby businesses want to deliver projects efficiently and design better buildings. And the solution to those is by adapting BIM. It has been successful at reducing uncertainty through virtual 3D construction, which directly results in lower costs and a better final outcome. In GIS contexts, why are we so concerned about BIM? When working with BIM, these are some of the points that are commonly raised through the design process. So listed here are some of the points that we need to focus on. So I want to see and analyze many BIM models at once in correct geospatial position. I want to plan a new building or bridge in a context to assess traffic impact. I want to see events and moving objects in the context of my BIM and GIS data, etc. and etc. So what do you observe among these requirements? BIM needs something for it to be explored and analyzed. The BIM design needs context, and absolutely this context pertains to location. Designing with nature requires an integrated and holistic approach that covers multiple scales. BIM needs location as context to ensure outcomes from design and construction. We all know that the real world is in 3D. When we speak of content, we pertain to buildings, transportations, and utilities. And when we speak of context, we pertain to the surroundings, so to the landscape, to the city. And that's where GIS comes into picture. The design needs to be geographically informed. BIM is the process for creating the data about the construction and design of these buildings and infrastructures, and GIS is the context or the location where to handle the life cycle information. The purpose of BIM and GIS integration is to enable the workflows for building assets and for managing them. Both BIM and GIS are 3D, and the most frequently requested improvements in 3D in GIS over the last few years have been for better integration and interoperability between BIM and GIS. Both these softwares can have similar capabilities to perform spatial analysis and transportation modeling that has overlaps at certain scales. GIS, as we all know, is not used for detailed design tasks such as interior designing or structural designing. And BIM, on the other hand, is not effective alone without GIS information and tools for geodesign workflows for major construction projects and land development. So this is where the partnership between Esri and Autodesk, announced last 2017, has become essential and a major step to build a bridge between BIM and GIS mapping technologies. Okay, so this model illustrates a flow or a continuous flow of information throughout all stages of the life cycle of an asset, and BIM and GIS workflows are needed within this cycle. Buildings and assets will be planned, designed, and built in a way that considers the context in depth, which is pertaining to GIS. So to simply put these workflow, BIM supplies detailed information about assets, while GIS provides information about assets in the context of the built and natural environment. For infrastructure owners around the world, enabling BIM and GIS mapping software to more seamlessly work together will optimize their ability to plan, design, build, and operate infrastructure assets, which saves precious time and money. So let's now proceed to BIM in ArcGIS environment. In ArcGIS, Esri has been rapidly responding to customer demand for 3D capabilities. So we've been receiving lots of demands, or not really demands, but requests for some integration for data interoperability. On the other hand, BIM is increasingly the new source of information that used to be authored in 2D CAD as floor plans. It is inherently 3D and it has the integrated descriptive attribution of all the building information models. When civil engineering applications are built upon a CAD platform, the result is what some call linear BIM or civil BIM. In other circles, this term is reserved for architectural or structural BIM. And in terms of software, it is usually Autodesk Revit. For some, they use ArchiCAD or Bentley for their architecture designing. Revit and ArcGIS Pro. So Revit is Autodesk BIM application that is utilized by designers for vertical BIM. So we refer to those as buildings. Although there are some landscape architects that have managed to use it as well for horizontal designing. Revit models include spatial data and related non-spatial information. It is essentially all the parts of a structure assembled virtually in 3D and contains all the information to identify what and how these parts are built. AEC industries are using these to create Revit files that follow the BIM standard so it can be correctly interpreted by any organization or product, ensuring all geometries and attributes can be organized as expected. So these organization allows a product such as ArcGIS Pro to use not only the 3D geometries, but also the properties from the drawings or the models. Pro can add Revit files into a scene where you can visualize and analyze the context of the surrounding area. So you can add these models to ArcGIS Pro, overlay it on top of your base map as the background, and interact with your other operational layers or feature classes on the map or on the scene rather. ArcGIS Pro 2.3, which is the current version, supports Autodesk Revit 2015 through 2019 file formats. So note for those who are still using Revit 2018, you can open it until ArcGIS Pro 2.2. So how do we add the Revit models in ArcGIS Pro? In the past, Revit models had to be imported through conversion to IFC or industry foundation classes files, or if you have Revit plugin, you can convert them to RVZ. Then it goes through a second conversion to an Esri geodatabase using the DIE or data interoperability extension, and then it will be stored as multipatch. So it is not straightforward since you need to use DIE to convert them to geodatabase feature class. Then from there, you can publish it to ArcGIS Online or your enterprise. With the release of ArcGIS Pro 2.2, which was last year, direct reading of Revit files directly off disk is now supported. Hope you can see the screen now, which has the arrow changes wherein Revit file is directly being read in ArcGIS Pro or as an input to your model builder. But of course, the old workflow is still there where you can still use it as input if you still have the IE. So this makes it possible to open a Revit model directly. Tools are also provided for correctly georeferencing BIM models in ArcGIS Pro. So remember that Revit data added to ArcGIS Pro behaves like any other 3D GIS data, which can be queried, measured, and then analyzed. The data model in Pro is very different from Revit. The Revit files in Pro must be organized into workspaces, datasets, and feature classes, so they are just like any other data source like a geodatabase or shapefile. Revit as a data source is represented as a read-only data source. So for those of you who have worked with CAD files, it's a similar idea, but it can be leveraged by the rest of the framework as this is just another data source. So this table on the left is showing all the data sets and feature classes that make up a Revit file. So it is being grouped by discipline, building disciplines, so architectural, structural, electrical, mechanical, and piping, and their corresponding building feature classes or families, then the sample categories and entities. So the Revit model is set up as a workspace in Pro. The Revit construction disciplines are organized into a building discipline dataset. So it is similar to a normal data set inside a geodatabase. So you have the architectural discipline, structural, electrical, mechanical, and piping, whichever is available in the model. And the categories are then organized into building feature classes. So on the right is how it looks like in Pro. And the feature classes are being shown as multipatch. The exterior shell feature class contains all the Revit elements that are tagged as exterior and part of the feature classes. So this feature class is normally contained in the architectural discipline, but in this case, it is pulled out because it is likely the best way to view your building. So in ArcGIS Pro Table of Contents, it is being added together with other building disciplines. So further, you can simply add a single feature class on your scene. So you can just drag and drop from the catalog pane if you will not be needing the other disciplines or other feature class families. Now we'll go to the common Revit workflows in ArcGIS Pro. First is the geo-referencing of Revit data in Pro. Geo-referencing is the process of spatially adjusting a CAD or Revit drawing without changing the original source of the data. In Pro, this is performed by assigning the proper projection file or using control links in the drawing to known geographic coordinates. Once you georeference your model, it is transformed on the fly in memory, while the source data remains unchanged in the native Autodesk file. There are georeferencing tools that allow us to define the projection and manually geoposition our model. So if you have been working with CAD, it's a similar tool that we are using, which are available in ArcGIS Pro. So if the product was given coordinate system information when it was created in Revit, you can assign the appropriate projection and it will draw in the expected location. If it was not created with the proper coordinate system, you can use the manual tools to locate, move to display, move the actual model, rotate, and elevate them to ground. When a CAD or Revit file is geolocated in ArcGIS, there are two companion files that are created with the same file name. So when you browse through the Windows Explorer, you will be seeing your actual Revit model file plus a WLD3 file, which is a World 3D file, and the PRJ extension file that has those extensions. So these are the auxiliary files that control the location of your Revit model in ArcGIS and have no impact on the file itself in their native application. So at this point, I'll be showing you how ArcGIS, how is Revit being displayed or organized in Pro. I'll show you steps on how Revit is being organized in. I'll show you how Revit is being organized in Pro and steps on how to georeference a Revit data. Okay, can everyone see my screen now? So I have my ArcGIS Pro 2.3.2 open, where I have preloaded one of my Revit files. So this Revit model is data for Esri office, which is the Edward Boosted Center. So I'll be working on the raw EBC file, which I haven't, which I know doesn't have a coordinate system in it yet. So when I first view the Revit file on my catalog pane, it will be under the folders. And it works like any other workspace. So if I click on the drop down for my Revit file, I will see the different disciplines being represented as data sets. And if I expand onto them, they will be shown as individual multi-patch. But of course, this just this just works as direct read. So if we need to do any analysis or editing, advanced analysis or editing, we may need to convert them to a file tree database. But this is how it looks like. So I can drag the entire Revit model, or I can just select from these disciplines. So once dragged and dropped onto my scene, the exterior shell discipline will be automatically activated by default, and the others are turned off, which saves the performance of my application. Okay, I have my base map on, and this model is not located on where it is supposed to be. It is sitting maybe somewhere along the Pacific Ocean, and it's because I know that it doesn't have coordinate system where I need to georeference it and position it manually on my map. So how do we do georeferencing? So first we just need to enable or activate the layer that we want to georeference. For this case, it will be exterior shell. Then intuitively, ArcGIS Pro will open up the Manage tab on the menu bar, which will contain all the tools that you will be working with Revit data. So here I can see my alignment tools, which include define projection, as well as georeference, and multiple selection tools for querying and for exporting. So if I want to locate it on its proper location in Singapore, I will be needing these georeferencing tools for it to be moved to the expected display, as well as other tools for it to be moved and rotated. So remember, when working with Revit files, they are usually already scaled 1:1, so we don't need to scale them anymore. So before using that, I have created a bookmark of the supposedly correct location of my model. So this one is along Ubi Avenue 4. And what I want to do now is to pull up the model into this area. So let's go back to Georeference tab and click on Move to Display. So ensure that the activated layer is your Revit layer before clicking Move to Display. Otherwise, it will not be activated, or this menu will not be available. Okay, so once it is moved to display, it will be shown on the area that I currently have the extent on my map, on my scene. Then I can just simply rotate it since it doesn't follow the building footprint on my base map. And note that, as I have mentioned, we don't need to scale it. So I'll just move onto my top view so I can easily rotate my model. So I'll just need to create one rotate button here and make sure that it follows the footprint, and just do a minor moving so it will entirely cover the area. Okay, looks good. So once done, you can save the current georeferencing, and it will create the associated world file, or the .wld3 file for your Revit. So remember, it doesn't change the inherent file itself. So it will just create those auxiliary files that contains the control points. So next time you need to pass these data to a colleague, which will open it to a GIS, into a GIS application, you need to pass both the Revit files and the world files. If it has projection, the associated .prj file. Okay, so it is still currently loading. So once done, I can close my georeferencing and further do any analysis or setting definition queries, as well as slicing onto this Revit model. Okay, I hope that demonstration is clear for everyone. So for those who have worked in CAD, those similar functionalities are there for you to define projection and georeferencing. So it's the similar concept and workflow that we apply to Revit. The next workflow that we commonly use would be converting a Revit data to multipatch for usage for different editing or for different analysis. So Revit data added to ArcGIS by default behaves like any other 3D GIS data, which can be queried, measured, and analyzed. But if you will be needing the Revit for editing, you need to export it to a multipatch format using the copy features tool, or this will be available if you just right click your Revit, click on export features, or through a model builder. So it is advisable to convert them also into geodatabase feature classes, which resolves performance issues when it comes to opening Pro at times. Okay. Another workflow is publishing to ArcGIS Online or Enterprise 10.7. To publish a Revit data from Pro, in ArcGIS Pro 2.3, a new tool, which is called Create Building Scene Layer, comes with a new version. And from here, you'll be able to create layer packages from the Revit itself and publish them to Portal 10.7 or ArcGIS Online, which was released last year. So once published and added on your web scene, you can use it on your JavaScript application to work with any 3D widgets such as slicing. So last time, if you're still using 2.2, the workflow is for you to create a scene layer of first to convert to a multi-patch, then use the create scene layer package tool and use share package to upload it to your ArcGIS Online. But now using create building scene layer package, you just need the actual Revit data as your input, then use share package to upload it to your ArcGIS Online account, then add them onto your web scene and further extend it onto your web application. So here I want to show this building model that we have published in ArcGIS Online account. Okay. So this is the same Edward boosted model that I have georeferenced earlier. So if you will be adding them onto a local coordinate system, you make sure that you have your base map or your own published base map, because ArcGIS Online has different coordinate system. For this case, I publish it using the WGIS84 Web Mercator auxiliary sphere, so it will follow the ArcGIS Online coordinate system for base maps. So here I can toggle on the disciplines, which contains architectural, then the structural discipline. I can also measure from the web scene. And if it is inside a web application, there's a tool for you to slice them onto your scene. Okay, at this point, we will be wrapping up the presentation. So the final items that I would like to point out are as follows. So Esri and Autodesk partnership improved BIM to GIS process workflows, as well as extending BIM in the web. So the partnership between Esri and Autodesk has ultimately paved the way to massively improve and evolve the workflows on how we work with BIM, from the ease of editing in ArcGIS Pro to extending BIM viewing in ArcGIS Online. And it has definitely created a substantial impact in the AEC industries.
We would like to open the floor for questions and feedback regarding our BIM to GIS presentations. Will the PowerPoint be sent out together with a link of this video? Yes, we will be sending out a PDF version of the PowerPoint slides along with the recording of this video. So I would also like to ask everyone to please provide your feedback at the end of our session, of our webinar, to help us improve on the upcoming webinars that we will be having here in Esri, Singapore. Okay, do we need to install any plugins to work with Revit files in ArcGIS Pro? We do not, you do not need to install. So as Elaine has mentioned earlier, as long as you have updated your ArcGIS Pro to the latest version, which is version 2.3, you should be able to work with your BIM with ease.
Okay, so with ArcGIS Pro 2.2, there's already a direct read capability, so you don't need any plugin in ArcGIS Pro. But prior to that, if you are working on lower version, it is recommended to, of course, either upgrade or it needs to go through DIE or the converting them into geodatabase feature classes. So we will recommend definitely to upgrade to at least 2.2. There's another question, can Revit data publish onto portal as seen without converting the Revit to multipatch? Yes, if you are using ArcGIS Pro 2.3, using the create building scene layer package will convert or will create a scene layer package for you, which is requesting or which is asking for the actual Revit itself as the input. So it doesn't need any conversion to multipatch anymore. Is there any way the Revit model can be opened in Esri without moving them manually? Yes, as long as your Revit file has the survey points and coordinate system created within the Revit application initially. Okay, is this application requiring high quality computers? So for ArcGIS Pro, we have the recommended hardware requirements published on our website. So memory-wise, it is recommended to at least have 16 gig of RAM because it is memory intensive. But if you will have computers or machines that have higher RAM than that, then it's okay. And when loading Revit files, remember that if it's direct reading from the Revit, it will consume memory since it is reading the Revit model of the disk. The geo-referencing demonstration looks simple and straightforward. However, is a manual approach. Is there a more defined method where one can geo-reference the model more accurately? Yes, definitely there is. So instead of just moving and you're just, we say, following your instinct and the building footprints on the base map, if you have a defined control points or if you have a feature class showing the actual footprint of the area that you would like to georeference onto, you can use the tools which is adding control points and snapping them onto the feature class. So these are more accurate and will ensure that your Revit model will be placed and aligned onto the proper location. Is it possible to georeference? Okay, our last question. Is it possible to georeference underground? So first, if your Revit model has the survey points or the coordinate system already set on the proper location underground, then it would be better because currently the tools that we have for georeferencing allow the Revit only to be moved to ground. So if you have the terrain, for example, on ArcGIS Pro, you have the terrain data, which of course will be your ground. Once you click on move to ground, the Revit model will just be placed on top of it. So it is recommended to have the proper location and set it from the Revit application.
Okay, unfortunately, we are out of time for today's webinar. So I would like to thank Elaine for sharing her BIM knowledge and for serving enough information regarding the introduction between GIS and BIM integration. So we have quite a number of questions still unanswered here. Again, please send us an email to connect with us. And with that, on behalf of everyone here in Esri, Singapore, we would like to thank everyone for attending our GIS Conversations webinar series. Before I finally end our webinar, we would like to invite everyone to attend our annual user conference, which will happen in the 3rd of September 2019. So for further details and for the early bird registration, so for the call for papers, invitation, and details, please check out esrisingapore.com. So thank you very much and have a great day ahead.